Welcome everybody to our step-by-step guide to write, promote and distribute your book. My name is Laura Harris and I'm here on behalf of Naji Grant, who is founder of Cool Smart Kid. He's also published 9 children's books, so he really does know a thing or two about the subject. So welcome and thank you for joining us today. So let's talk about the objectives as to why you're actually going to write your book. You need to think about the reasons for this because it will give you a kind of deeper understanding as to the whole purpose of the project, which will take over your life to a certain extent. So it's really important that you have a very, very strong idea about the reasons behind it. Let's talk about the topic. So many of you will already have a topic in mind, but if not, then maybe you may not have already decided on a topic for your book. You need to identify that. The third thing is titles. So although you may not actually have the exact title at this point, you might want to scribble some ideas down as regards to type of titles, and this will kind of lead into your different chapters as well. So it's a good idea to have some sort of idea. It can also be tweaked towards the end of the process, but it gives you a kind of something to kind of a goal to strive towards. Strategies. So you will need to identify strategies for the layout, length and timeline of your book. Don't forget that it may take longer than you think actually to come to the end of the process. Character development. So it depends whether or not you're actually writing a fictional book or non-fiction. That may also be possible. Maybe you're writing about a character, maybe somebody, a celebrity, or it could be somebody who's already died. It could be a famous person, but possibly you're writing a fiction book and therefore you are coming up with your own imaginary characters. So therefore you will need to really think about those characters. Maybe you want to sketch down some ideas about what they look like. We'll talk about that in a bit more detail later on. What about the book cover that you will have? This is a really exciting part of the whole process. A lot of people do actually have freelance illustrators and designers to actually design the book, although some authors do design the cover themselves, depending on how creative you are and your artistic talent. So do have a think about the sort of look and feel and the design of your cover. That's a good place to start when thinking about these ideas at the very beginning of how you're going to go ahead and write your book. Target audience and promotion. This is a really important thing, and we will go into this in a little bit more detail as well. And then identifying resources, editors, for example. Again, a lot of people do freelance this work out, and we will give you some pointers as to how to do this. The publishing process. So this can be very detailed, and obviously we're going to talk about that on this webinar. Identifying your reason and choosing a topic. Okay, so actually the book will really be a reflection of yourself, whether or not it's an autobiography or something about you. It doesn't really matter. Your style of writing, how you kind of look at the topic in your particular way, all of that is very unique to you and will come across to the reader. It will have an impact on certain groups of people. The knowledge that you have and experience that you have on the topic will also come through in the writing that you produce. So know your reasons for why you want to actually, create your book. Let's have a look at those reasons. You may actually be helping a certain group. For example, if you're writing something that's a little bit more academic focused, maybe students will read it, for example. So therefore, it will have a big impact on their studies. You will be challenged and rewarded. Don't forget there may be some setbacks along the way, but that's okay. We're going to give you those skills today as to how to work through those. You will be growing in new areas as you learn new things, especially the research that will go into the topic that you're writing about. And the book will possibly generate an income for you. Do remember that you will need to have multi-channeled income sources. I recommend not relying just on one channel of money coming in through the sales of your book. Unless you're a really established author already, then that would be great if you can do that. But just remember, if you're an author that hasn't had a book published before, you are right at the beginning of this process. And also your credibility and authority. Your status in terms of your career and also the connections that you make will definitely go up during this process. Okay, so creating your own book and having it published and on the shelf, or indeed if it's on an online retail, really will give you an incredible sense of pride. So that's something that you should really, really be proud of at the end of this process. It will also give you an edge in business, as we've mentioned. In terms of charging more for public speaking, it's pretty likely that you will be able to charge more once your book has been published, because people will notice you and your reputation will grow and increase. It will definitely open new doors. You'll definitely meet new people along the way, and people that are well connected as well. And it will leave a legacy behind, which is always something really nice for you to think about. So what about the topic? Let's look at this in a little bit more detail. So we did mention that the book that you're writing could be fiction or non-fiction. That depends on the subject matter that you're writing about. You will want to think about the length of the book. We're going to tell you in the next few slides about the length of the book in terms of whether it's fiction or non-fiction, and the difference in writing styles. So maybe you want to check out other books that have already been published on the same subject to see whether or not they have a particular style. It's always great to do that research before you start. In terms of how you feel about writing the book, whether or not it's something that you're doing for self-fulfillment, or is it a financial reason behind it as well? It could be both, so just have a think about that. Choosing a topic. So some new projects will take longer. Again, if you are an established writer and you have a lot of experience, this process may be faster for you. Many writers are already writing a blog, and if you're not already, you might want to consider doing that, just so that you can develop your style and sort of build up an audience as well. Do inject some information about things that you know. It's often writers write about topics that they know, so that can be a good starting place, and it will make the whole experience a lot easier and a lot more fun for you as well. So is there enough information online or in existing books on this topic that can easily be found? Perhaps you're writing on a brand new subject, or maybe you are writing a slightly different tangent to the current topic, and there are other topics that are already out there that have been written about by other authors. So there could be new evidence. Maybe you're writing on possibly a scientific topic, for example, and new evidence and data has come to light. So that could be a good angle for you to think about, and it really will give you a USP in terms of your actual book. And definitely do your research in terms of the information that you're going to put in your book. You're really going to have to edit that as well. Is this something that I could think, breathe and dream about without getting tired of it? So the whole idea behind writing a book is that you will need to be immersed in this particular project for quite some time, maybe a year, sometimes up to 2 years, in terms of writing it, editing it, and actually getting it published. So the whole process could take longer than you think. So make sure that you do choose a topic that you're really passionate about. You will need to immerse yourself in your theme, do plenty of research, lots of reading, maybe attend other webinars on the subject as well. And it will take a lot of effort emotionally as well. So it's maybe a good idea to sort of set certain hours aside each day in order to achieve, write the amount of words that you want to write in order to complete the project. Layout, timelines, length, and characters. So we talked a little bit about the structure of the book, so let's talk about that in a bit more detail. You will need to have a table of contents. You will need to look closely at the titles of the chapters. Of course, you can change this as you go along, but it just gives you a brief outline and a brief structure to start with at the beginning. So choose clear titles for every topic that summarize the information you're going to include in each chapter. And look for a summary that invokes emotion as well. I think that's really important. Pre-writing is the process of deciding what each chapter is going to be about. Brainstorming allows you to decide what chapters you want to keep or cut. You can brainstorm on a sheet of paper or arrange post-its. Arrange post-its with different colours and ideas so that you have the main idea or chapter title on top and subtopics grouped underneath. This provides you with an idea of how much material you have and the length of your book to work with. When it comes to establishing a timeline, this is something that you will need to understand might need some flexibility. As we've mentioned, it may take you longer than you might think in terms of actually collecting all of the material together, writing the material and also editing it and eventually publishing the book. So do have a timeline in mind, though. It's really good to have that goal written down about when you actually want to complete this project by. It can be divided into days, months, years, or important events as well. And it helps you understand when everything's happening, what makes sense and when. It helps the reader understand when events are taking place as well. So let's look at more detail as regard identifying the characters in your book. So we did mention that obviously there's a slight difference between whether or not you're writing a fiction book, so imaginary characters, or whether actually you're writing about somebody who's living, or maybe they've died, so they were actual real human beings, which is a completely different concept. So in terms of creating a brand new character, you will need to think about their persona, the lives and experiences, the aspirations, fears and actions of those characters. And then you will need to kind of really develop that character. So what does that character look like? How do they sound? It might be a really good idea to sort of sketch these ideas out, or if you're not that good at drawing, maybe sort of ask somebody else. So describe the character to someone else and then they can write down or actually create a little character and put it down on paper so you can kind of visualize what the character will look like and sound like. So let's talk about the length of the book. We did just mention this, and there is a distinct difference between fiction and non-fiction books, which is really interesting, and it's important to know this before you start. So it's recommended that non-fiction is at least 10,000 words. Make sure that you eliminate content that is not useful to the reader, and you will be doing this as time goes by, but especially towards the editing stage of the whole process. It's recommended that fiction be approximately 50,000 words. So there's a really big disparity there between those two types of books, fiction or non-fiction. 20,000 words for a short book and 150,000 words for a longer book. Again, a really big difference. So have a think about that. Eliminate content that is not useful to the reader. Remember, that's really, really important. The topic will also dictate how long your book is going to be. Okay, so this is one of my favourite sections actually. The book cover, design and blurb. Let's have a look at this in a little bit more detail. When thinking about your cover design, it's often that you might actually freelance this work out. Again, as I've mentioned, it could be that, that you are a really good illustrator and you want to actually create the book cover yourself. And that does happen quite a lot, depending on the author, of course. So the book cover is a direct link into your marketing strategy. So how it looks will really, really appeal or not appeal, as the case may be, to a potential customer. So really, really bear this in mind. We've already looked at making sure that you've done your research in terms of other books that are written on similar topics to make sure that your book cover is either different to those other ones, or maybe you want it to kind of fit into that sort of branding, so that it, you know, it sticks to the topic. That really makes sense. So book covers can be considered a point of purchase for advertisements. So it could be on a shop shelf, or actually it could be on an online store as well. So that will be really important for you to think about those two different elements and how the book will be received by the viewer. You must have control over the impression the design leaves a potential reader, so always have that in mind. And the first thing to keep in mind is your target market. So for example, if you are pitching your book to children, you want to make sure that there are really bright colours on the cover. Or if it's an adult book and maybe it's a more academic book, then possibly really bright colours and lots of images of characters may not be appropriate. So do have a think about the topic that you're writing about and how the cover will actually match the content of the book. That's really, really important. It may take some time to sort of come up with those ideas and narrow them down, come up with the perfect cover. Again, these are ideas that you will talk about with your illustrator or the other freelancers that you've employed to help you out in this process. So take from the title and subtitle to brainstorm ideas for the artwork and also make it engaging, depict the theme or subject of the book. Make sure that the artwork does not exploit the content of your book. That's really important. And make sure that the text is readable and not too distracting. Avoid loud images, excessive graphics, and blurred text effects. Sans serif fonts are safest for the title as they are more readable. So again, you might want to do some research into the different types of fonts because they really can have very different impact on the viewer. Never leave the back cover blank. So the back cover of a book is really interesting. Sometimes there's more content on the back. Oftentimes people do use another image on the back, depending again on how you want the look and feel of the book to look like. And also the spine as well. You want to think about the spine because that's the very first thing that people will actually see when they go to a shop or, well, particularly when it's on the shelf in a shop. So ask for recommendations from fellow writers and experts in the same field. Is there anybody else that you already know who's gone through this whole process of publishing? And if there isn't, definitely ask your publisher to put you in touch with somebody who can give you some more advice on this topic. Emphasize your bio if it includes a track record of extreme significance. Really important to sell yourself during this whole process, as well as obviously selling the book. So you mentioned the spine a moment ago, and it is something that you will need to think about. So that spine is as important as the front cover. So the spine usually matches the front and back covers in terms of style, design, and color as well. So do have a think about this and make sure that the spine is really readable. Obviously, your name will be on the spine as well. So do have a little think about how you want that to look. Identifying your target readership and publishing. Define the target audience for your book before you write it. Again, you might want to do some research on this subject, maybe do a little bit of market research actually, either online or maybe in a small group, whereby you ask your target audience what they want and what they like in other different types of books out there. Your target audience should never be everybody. So it's never going to be one size fits all when it comes to publishing your book because it is unique to you. And when you're writing a book, you're usually kind of targeting it towards certain different reader bases. Know your reader's expectations. That's really important. Define clear goals. Develop a concise description of what your book is about and how it will benefit your readers. So in terms of audience profile, let's look at this in a bit more detail. What is the typical gender of your audience? How old are they? What are the demographics? Are they married, single, or divorced? Or maybe they're too young to be any of those things. What other books, genres, and authors do they read? So, for example, if you are writing a children's books, there are a whole plethora of other children's authors out there. So check them out. Who are the most popular authors? And also, which countries are you looking at promoting your book in? Whether it's in the West or the East, or maybe somewhere else in the world. Make sure that it's sort of appropriate for those different regions. And that your marketing will match as well. That's really important. Who's your competition out there? Do check out other authors as well. What are their dreams? And how will your book inspire, inform, or entertain them? Hopefully all three. So researching your market, we looked at the demographics, different forums. Social media is really, really important. And also you should be thinking about using social media during this process, not once the book is actually published, but also throughout the process on your Instagram account or other social media channels. You can start to raise your profile and raise interest in the potential publication of your book by giving your reader and your fan base a little few sort of snippets along the way about how you're going through the process. People absolutely love to see how the process is in terms of creating something like a book or another type of product. Polls. You might want to get some feedback from people about the type of book they want to read. Book bloggers as well. Again, you might want to find a freelancer to help you promote your book, and your author blog as well. Researching your market effectively. So listen to what readers have to say. This is really, really important. Contribute to conversations and continuously monitor your readers' interest and also respond to them, especially on social media. People absolutely like a response. If they've taken the time to comment, make sure that you comment back and say thanks. So we mentioned some freelancing services earlier, and let's just go through a few really well-known online freelancing services. So we're just going to list them now for you. They are Upwork, Freelancer, Fiverr, Guru, On Contract, Truelancer, People Per Hour, Craigslist, 99 Designs, and then things to know. So understand specific skill set required to do the job. Make sure the freelancer has good reviews and previous experience. And most freelancing sites ensure security of the payment process. So that means that they've usually signed up. Oftentimes payment will go through electronically. So it's very similar to ordering an Uber or something like that. You create an account and then the person doing the job has created an account. Other people can review them to say whether they were good, bad, or something in between. You can also be reviewed as a customer as well. So it's a very similar kind of thing to other platforms, social media platforms that you are using and other apps as well. And it's just a really great way to kind of also connect with new people. But again, do check with your publisher if all of these services, so illustrators, editors, and so on, can also be found through a publisher, but you might want to use one of these different services online to source other freelancers as well. Okay, so let's look at before publishing, what you need to do. So you will need to edit your book and then also pass it on to your professional editor as well to give it the once over. You will need to proofread your book several times, and also I recommend passing it over to trusted friends and family to read as well. And also possibly other freelancers. And also the cover needs to be completed as well. So you also need to look at the description of the book, keywords, formatting, and the most exciting thing of all, setting a publishing date. So congratulations, you're now ready to publish. If you'd like any more information about this webinar, you can contact Naji Grant. So do visit him at www.coolsmartkid.com. Thank you for listening, and I hope that that's been helpful.